Hi, everybody. Welcome. And thank you for coming to the Black River launch. We have, or hope to have, 8 poets reading today. Each poet will be able to read for 5 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes for question and answer. And if there aren't any question and answers, we'll just have more poems. I'm Lise McLaughlin, the publisher of the Black River Death Poems, and I invite you to check out all 20 of Nature Culture's publications at nature-culture.net. So we hope this book will be of use and comfort to those who are grieving and also those working with death. We're going to record the first part of this reading, and then we'll stop the recording in order to have a conversation. So I would like to welcome our first poet, Suzanne Rancourt.
Hello. Yes, I am Suzanne Rancourt. And I just want to say what an honor it is to participate in this publication. Um, Having worked in the fields of hospice and then helping my mother move through her final phase, this is such a significant alternative approach to deathing and dealing with the afterwash of the grief that can be carried. And sometimes we just don't know what we're carrying until we get into a particular writing workshop, like this first poem that I'm going to read, The Many Ways to Drown. There had been a photo prompt for years that always triggered something within me. And so for years, when I used this photo prompt, um, I had this overwhelming emotion that I just couldn't connect with. I didn't know how to access it. And I was waiting for it to be born. Uh, I survived many drownings and have been resuscitated from death um, on more than one occasion. And then one day it came. And so what's accessing are the emotions and the what ifs, and then applying the future principles, how this poem can help others. The Many Ways to Drown. This first responder will carry you forever. The air bubbles gasping from Dog Day's river muck will make him vomit for years to come. He will never again split the breast of a Christmas or Thanksgiving turkey without feeling your green 8-year-old ribs crack from adrenaline-fired chest compressions. He will never allow his own children near the river or lake or pool again, and they will rebel. Scream adolescent hate at him, hurl dejection glaringly, stand lily white on the outer side of the chain link fence while their friends, parents, and schoolmates flutter kick and bob between lifeguard whistles, their arms floundering. He will not be able to save his own children from misconceptions, fallacies, fake news, propaganda, or risk-driven misunderstandings communicated by his own grief and what ifs. What if they had searched there first? What if someone had noticed the boy's absence sooner? What if, tell me, what if the loss of all children was mourned equally? What if the river's death did not pull him back into the humidity that gags him still as lifeless children in a man's arms, a father's arms? How do we protect from this? Keep safe, keep clean. How can a man wash clean from this kind of self-inflicted failure when his arms still carry the weighted truth? He did everything he could, and still it was not enough. this sheaf of wind levels itself against port city plains, cutting wheat and oats, carving earth around olive trees, spiral, young almond trees with fruit still covered soft bristles in green, unsuspected lightness. No crack between night and day. Sharp whistles morning birds echo down narrow walking streets, bounce side to side, begging for ears, their own brand of oracle, when sleep doesn't come, when nothing leaves without arrival, when there are no departed. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Suzanne. Our next reader is Amelia Díaz Ettinger. If you could start your video, Amelia, I'll be able to. There we go. All right, here we go.
Hi, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Liz, for this opportunity to read from this beautiful, beautiful book. In a way, to me, having this book is like being able to participate in a death cafe where people allow a place for grief to perch and silently calm the waters of grief. The first poem that I'm going to read is in Spanish, and I apologize for those who might not know the language, but at least you can enjoy the rhythm and the flow of the words, hopefully. Elogia a un viejo más. Tenías hormigas en los pies, por eso viajabas, pero el reloj marcaba tus horas. Agitabas a todos que fueran contigo a la madre patria. No sabía que ya estabas ahí. Que mi vida se apaga, cantaba sin son con una descarcarrada guitarra española, la guitarra que era lo que tú ansiabas, una condenación, la simplicidad negada. Español, españolito, España, pero eras criollo como el pan de agua. No sé por qué no derramé ni una lágrima para que nunca amanezca, pero ya han nacido centenares de amaneceres y no estás más cerca de ser lo que no eres. Another poem within this manuscript, within this book, is para mi obito, or for my notice, my death notice. Cuando llegue mi calaverita a buscarme, que me dé un beso y que baile una plena y me llene el pecho de flores silvestres. Le pido a esa santa muerte que grite mi nombre, para que brinden las aves con los lagartos de mis deseos, que las tortugas del océano y hasta el pobre cemento recuerden la corta sombra de mi cuerpo. Porque como dice Mary Oliver, no solo quiero haber visitado por un tiempo. For this poem, I have a very crude or rough translation of the poem, which I have not polished, but to give you an idea of what it is about. When my skull comes to find me, I want her to kiss me on the lips, and that she will dance with me a plena. I wanted to fill my chest with wildflowers. I asked this holy death to scream my name so that the birds and the lizards of my desire can toast to my name. I want the ocean turtles and even the broken cement to recall the smallness of my shadow, because, like Mary Oliver says, I not only want to visit for a short time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a treat to hear 2 languages. Our next reader is Mary Brancaccio.
Thank you for letting me be part of this wonderful anthology and this wonderful reading. I'm going to read a longer piece, prose piece or prose poetry piece that is in here that was written as a stream of consciousness piece. It really is about outpouring of grief sometime after the death of my mother, who died of lung cancer. And it's called After She Died. Just a scrolled bed and an oxygen tank, and the terrible emptiness of her house, now that she was not there to welcome me home, now that I could not throw my arms around her body and pull her into the self of me. I found her stacks of mail, sorted bills, one she made me write out in her last weeks, when she was too tired to do more than sign her name. How she would ask me to read a bill and wait a moment to summon up a thought. How she was irked by my brother's bill from the marina because he never paid for his own fuel for his boat, but left it on her charge. And then she said, pay it anyway. How she worried my father drank too much. How she made him put the TV in the basement so he couldn't pass the day watching Fox News and sports and drinking bourbon. And it wasn't like he drank too much, but she was sure it wasn't good for him at all. And she wanted him to go on living. How she posed in the photo on the kitchen shelf, her chemo cap on, her loose clothes, her arms spread out before a giant white azalea in full bloom, the smile on her face, pure joy. That day Dad drove her home after her weekly treatment, and she spotted the bushes outside town hall and made him pull a U-turn to go back and look. The camera was in the car from their last trip, and he captured her amazement, her love of beautiful things, the abundance of it all. And in the cupboard, hordes of vitamins and pills and Chinese herbs and other things to make her well that didn't. And in the fridge, the morphine that never did enough in the end to stave off suffering. How she would arc off the bed in terrible pain, and none of us knew, not even her, when it would come and how long it would last. And my father dreaming of building her muscle back by propping her on an exercise bike, how desperately he wanted her well again, how he prayed for what would never come, how he broke down sobbing on the day I had to tell him that the doctors said, there's nothing left to try. It's over. It's time to think a different way about things. And how she wanted to be waked in the church, which wasn't something we'd done, but what country people did. And she liked the idea, how cool and quiet it was, with the soft sound of water in the baptismal font and the hushed carpet of the main church, the smell of beeswax candles and the click, click, click of ladies' high heels on the tiles in the alcove. How strange she looked at the wake in her wig and makeup, not at all like herself, but enough to fool most people. But then I was left in the house with silence. I wanted something to fill it up, but not flowers, the stench of lilies, like the odor of sickness and decay. Too sweet, not salty enough to believe they're really alive. How her hands and belly were bruised by the constant pricks of needles, how she withstood it all, how she wanted to know just what would happen when she died, how she insisted I ask the doctors. And when they said, is that it? Is that what she wants to know? She stared back with her black eyes. Yes, that's what I want to know. I want to know how I am going to die. Months before, she called me on the telephone to tell me that she finally knew what was going to kill her. Cancer. She just didn't know when. And that it was some relief from the years of worrying about the wrong thing. What if she loved me? What if she loved me more than I knew? And later, when I walked out of a church in Spain and saw a massive gardenia filled with white blossoms and impossible incense, I knew she wasn't dead, but she was somewhere far from me. And once in a while, I'll smell those gardenias and think how far she came, how much I loved her, how hard she was to love sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Our next reader is Kate Rex. Welcome, Kate.
Okay, I'm unmuted, yeah?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, I've been having an exchange with Lisa about the dead and how it's possible to offer them some healing, how it's possible to offer some healing to our ancestors. And it makes an awful lot of sense to me. It's really helped. I think this poem I'm going to read lays out some of the healing for my dad. Right. Dad, I heard you were dying as we walked up the hill to the fortress. I answered the call somewhere in between the roadside labels I was using to steady my dread. There was still time for those nearby to say goodbye. Thousands of miles away in the sunlight, I surrounded you with love and thought, trying to stop the fear seeping in. My need, not yours. I hoped the nurse would sing in Così Secolari for you. It would carry your soul with pride. I hoped you'd be glad and go with joy, reunited with who you were. I hope you knew my love. I hope it no longer mattered. I held my breath and focused anywhere but that empty, numbing space. You had left me twice before. The second time, we shared the stage in your hospital room. You watched me intensely, captive. Later, when you turned your eyes inward, I bid for your attention, massaging your hands with the oil I'd mixed. I drank your gratitude and I attached myself to go nowhere either of us wanted to go. You were trapped inside your internal landscape. Your mother had prayed over you, a small, raging boy. She prayed that you might control your temper. Was this her final victory? My role was to keep you safe. Watchful, I argued your case with the staff, fitting it into a narrative I had stitched with my need, my unrequited love, and my outrage. With you, I had an exclusive love, always your firstborn. I jumped over the cracks, held my breath. Maybe this time things would work out. The first time you left, I was 4. I understood your passion. It became part of my still soft structure, a reference and a crutch. What was between us sidestepped the hierarchy of our relationship. It was precious. It was important. You let it go. You were gone and became other before my boundaries were strong enough. My love and loyalties were not enough to keep you. I flattened into numbness, rejecting breath. In the hospital, you resisted and raged, giving in bit by bit, not once on your own terms. I held your passion and fed it back to you, one piece at a time. Near the end, I tried to fetch you back, using some of it to remind you of why and who you were. Those may have been 2 of your questions. I walked the perimeter of the fortress. At the wall, there's a tree unable to support its weight, its roots exposed, held up with a crutch. It's only possible to see it from underneath. It cuts and frames the sky a strong and intense blue. The needles are 3-dimensional, deep green. The trunk is as black as the night. That's for my dad. And the next poem I want to read, which is much shorter, if I've got it here somewhere, is it's called Scratch Messages. And one of the messages in this poem came to me as a message you might reveal on a scratch card. And the message is the irresistible draw of pure wild love. And it's written all together. There are no spaces in it. Scratched messages. She left messages, not necessarily for me, but she knew I could and would piece them together, reading both them and the spaces in between, the shorthand of a shared life. Her books were piled by her bed, arranged so they could talk to one another. Proximity helped. She'd marked the pages with anything to hand, tickets, old envelopes with annotated drawings on the back, cryptic notes, and the postcard, worn at the edges, layered with the thoughts of the man who'd sent it, and the irresistible draw of pure wild love. I kept the markers in their places. I left chocolate for her in the cupboard, some sweetness for her journey, a book of poems next to her photograph. I reordered the books so they would have new conversations. The envelopes were on the wall, a little exposed. And the postcard, that went with her in her coffin. Their secret love to be taken beyond the grave. And I kept the irresistible draw of pure wild love.
Thank you, Kate. That was beautiful. Our next reader is Charlotte Eulette. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm real happy to be here, and I'm real happy to have both of the books that are so beautiful on the inside, too. I mean, the care list that you guys put into this and the fantastic collection of poets in this book are beyond belief. This is so necessary and needed. And I know this because I am the co-founder of the Sullivan Foundation and Institute, besides being a poet and an author. And we have so many celebrants that are also traumatic death and end-of-life celebrants that will be using all of your poems, and I thank all the poets that are on today. Everything that you're telling us and the rest of the poets that are going to be reading, I've got goosebumps, and I've done lots of funerals and end-of-life ceremonies. So you're going to make so many people happy now and into the future. And I also have the other book, both books. This is the ceremonial book. And it's nice because the poems are bigger. And look at this beautiful book because it's ceremonial, right? And so, and I am going to be reading these poems at bookstores, libraries, the gigs that I do with my Baja Sur Poets and Writers League. We do events. Teaching writers, I'll be having them use your poems as part of their writing assignments and getting them to perform their poetry loud, spoken word. I'm going to be using them in ceremonies, and we are also Death Cafe facilitators going way back. And I bow to John Underwood's memory and to his wonderful mother who wrote the foreword, Susan. And also I'm going to be using this for the assisted living and the elder daycare that I'm participating in here where I live. And of course, the next book that I have coming out, I will mention this wonderful book so that everybody knows that what we hearken back to and how we are here as active people in this beautiful circle of life from the beginning, from womb to tomb. It's the circle of life. So I will read my poem today that I read at ceremonies. One poem is called When Friends Die. Here goes. And then the next poem I will read too after this. Next poem in this book. When friends die. He didn't expire or pass away. He died. We didn't lose him either. You can say it, died. All that he was while here on this land goes with him, and with him too, the hardihood of friendship. Often we think and feel that when friends die, they linger here a while. To walk along the streets of our city, the ones paved with desire, to walk through the woods, walk with dogs the way we used to, walk in the park past the rose garden and sit at our shady bench, walk lakeside by the fountain and watch it fountain together, and back down to the lake, around the museum and the auditorium, and past the closed Vienna hot dog stand still there. When my friend died, he had so many experiences and bold times shared with me and you that got gathered in his life on earth bundle. Like a hobo carrying a stick with a bundle tied on the end. We go with him. We unpack us and we'll rove. He knows we'll materialize and animate the love made that's always. He died, we live, we'll die, and they'll live. All of our friends gather about, back and forth. We flow naturally, smothered with love. It's all we are to know. The next poem is called Tranquilo. I live in Baja, Mexico, so I read this poem aloud to my bilingual family and friends and audiences. Tranquilo, in Spanish, the word is sometimes offered to help people calm down and take a breath. The beachcomber dogs digging holes to bury the setting sun each night in the Pacific Ocean. Tranquilo, tranquilo. The old lady in the church touches your dim, trembling hand with hers, creviced, to soothe only you. The lentil sopa boils over the stove, wafting spice and garlic. The man in the wheelchair who lost his legs asks for help via a paper coffee cup. The man who lost his faith once long ago. Maybe you will find it and return it to him someday. My mother's pink sweater I wore for many days while tending her dying. Her last breath. She, for my first breath. Fair exchange, tranquilo. The lavender scarf and the wind flying under the bridge anywhere. Her gold tooth glows in the night's fluorescence as she smiles, making wild tortillas. The hairdresser rinses your hair, thinking about her young daughter. Her mother is watching. No men in the family anymore. Uncle Costa, by the grave, put some money and cigarettes out beneath the wreath, so workers don't take the frozen funeral flowers away yet. Just another day, please. The ducks and geese and seagulls getting along so well on Chicago's Lake Michigan city shore. The crows politely wait in their distance for their turn to be nearer. Tranquilo, tranquilo, tranquilo. Cousin Nikki and her pounced on heart, much love brewing all the time. Tranquilo. Her sister Dina, her sister cousin Dina, sharp mind asleep now. Tranquilo. Love, joy arena in our souls. Love tokens spent. We have only so many, can't replenish. Oh, so valuable when you give them out. You know it's so, each of you, way down deep in the hush we share, with hands pressed together, make aloud your tranquilo. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Our next reader is Subhaga Crystal Bacon. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Wow, what a powerful reading so far. A wonderful collection to be part of. I have two poems in the book, and I'm going to read those for you. The first one is in the section called Remaining. These are poems that are sort of contemplations of the nature of being in a mortal body. With time. Wind is erasing the hills this morning, blurring their lines with a white mist of lifted snow. The northern sky an imperturbable blue. The turmoil of air is not its business. I kneel before Kuan Yin. Her forearms hold a lotus, the braided loop of infinity, and two hands touch in the sign of prayer. I contemplate the suffering in this world and ask for relief. It blows like the wind lifting snow. It sweeps around the earth like a silk veil, this exhale, in and out, breath and wind, darkness and light, living and dying. It goes on with us and without. These bones settle on the cushion, in the body, compressing like the rings of trees, rooted in the neutral, ever-changing earth. And the second poem is in the section called Journeying. And I wrote this one year at the end of the year or the start of the year, the next day. I can't quite remember if it was New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, but it's a poem that I often hearken back to when the year changes over, to just remind myself what that means. Years, a koan. Nothing is last, nothing first. Everything is a wheel, here and here and here, with no room for there. Even infinity loops back on itself. While dark, also bright, up, also down. Try to mark what ends from what starts. Walk on this spinning ball, east to west or north to south, and the place you began is also moving, like the horizon out of reach. Stand still and ride through the night sky that holds the morning light. Morning. The crescent moon hangs like a comma in the sentence of your life. Follow it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful reading.
Thank you.
Our next reader is Rodger Martin. Welcome.
Philosopher Charles Taylor, in Cosmic Connection, cites poetry as a premier art form which permits us to re-enter that space between life and loss, where a spiritual reconnection can occur, if only briefly, that somehow refreshes the soul. War Dog Memorial, Barrington, New Hampshire. Next to the veteran stone sits an acrylic German shepherd, panting for command. In front, a small flag, a whittled stick, and two large feathers tied with leather, which lift in the breeze. Like an illusion, the summer evening's haze simmers about a drooping sun. A distant lawnmower whines like a gnat. Draped about the shepherd's neck, dog tags, Colonel, Roxy, Satan, Cochise. How easy they trained, anxious, eager, man and dog, while others strutted the suited wire of duty and looked down, knowing the dogs would sense too late in that sudden crash of automatic weapons, recognize, like their men, all had been forsaken. The wind turned on my cheek. I saw old Barley lift himself at each late night mission, wait by the door, acknowledgement, and after plod to his bed, circle 3 times, and drop, one great sigh escaping as he drifted into sleep. Molly. As sea waves of grief wash over the sand, know this a necessary acknowledgement of loss. Know each recession of cleansing, salty liquid erodes a grain or two of pain. Know her spirit, footloose and free of limit, again splashes along the beachy shore of an ocean. Know she gifts these tears, these memories, preparations for the heart to blossom again. Know. And then lullaby for my mother. After a half century, it's time to sleep, to turn hand in hand from that corn-filled summer, to turn from that stroll along the lane, fields flush with stalk and silk. Time to turn toward tonight, the stars, and an ancient guitar strummed by a tall and bearded balding man from Italy, stooped like his Apennines or my Appalachians, his fingering precise as the mountain's first spring shoots, tones like the gurgle high above of melted ice, finding its liquid way to the valley greening below. Time to let go. Lift the tiny finger grasping yours, those delicate hands you lay on the ivory ridge of your piano, each key a thrush's call, dawn and dusk, your singular note arcing upon the evening velvet, lingering, lingering, gone.
Thank you, Rodger. Thanks for doing a pet poem too. That's the hardest section for me to read. Our next reader is Joan Hofmann. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I've been looking forward to a sort of community in this hour for us today. I have 3 poems, the last of which is an animal poem also, Pet. The first one speaks to items and habits, which many of the other poems have already done, a legacy from those that we have lost and loved and lost. Mine's called Keepers. Like my mother now passed, I wash out plastic bags to use again. Pint-sized sandwich, quart. Plastic containers from the deli, take out. I rinse out glass jars for mayonnaise and jelly. I stack newspapers for box stuffing, wood stove starting. I fold wrapping paper, slowly removing the tape. Ribbon bows, gift bags, peanut packing. I hold onto his daring looks, her smiles of support. Sunlight on the wavy glass windows, darting hummers at the feeder, seeds from last year's Sweet William, geranium stalks in cold storage. I massaged my mother's legs, propped my father's head. I hold a blanket he used, wear her sweater still. Peaches, magnolia leaves scattered on the lawn. I plant the pansies they loved all around me. When I was young, where I was in elementary school, we were asked to learn poems, to recite them. And there was one called The Children's Hour by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Between the dark and the daylight, when the night is beginning to lower, comes a pause in the day's occupation that is called the children's hour. My poem's not about the children's hour, but that time of day, I believe, is when we connect often with those that we have in the past loved and who past lived. Mine is called Pause at Sundown. Then, between daylight and dark, when night lowers to flatten, horizon rises to surmount the day's drain. A surge is imagined possible to create with care and fervor something extraordinary, to make something new, venture into parts unknown. Then also, we think of the forgotten, the left behind, regrets of past, settled into our cores, holding place, grounding us in memory, to gather both gains and losses, and move us, once again renewed, just enough to breathe into a sigh and push up from the chair, like a turtle lifts her home, to carry burdens and go on. I didn't realize when the call for poems came out that there would be a section on pets. And it wasn't until I got the book where there was mentioned earlier 5 sections: dying, death, remaining, journeying, and our animals. And I said, oh, I have to read you on driving my cat Shadow from Connecticut to my son's house in New Jersey. When the breathing labored in and out, and I could lightly touch but not stroke my fingers deep in your gray, long hair, fluffy of Maine Coon, nor touch your distinct pink nose. When we laid side by side on the wooden hall floor, wishing I could sniff into your plush cloud puff jowls, when I could see your pale pink tummy peeking through eddied swirls of curly fleece like lambs. When I was near to the musky sweet smell of your hair, something like fresh air after rainfall. When after the fan with long extension cord word air to shift over you, and you shut your mouth and your eyes and lay on your haunches with your head turned to me. When I could see your calm and your belly not bellow so much, I crept back into bed to grab some sleep and hoped when I woke again that you wouldn't be standing up and straining with teeth bared, the one scared not scaring. When I called the vet and said you needed to be seen, as when so many other times over past 14 years, your asthma overtook you and the prednisone wasn't enough. But you got a shot of Supermed and off we went to New Jersey. Everything's gonna be fine. He's even feeling better already. When Ronan and Riley were waiting, all excited to see you, texting during our drive on the New Jersey Turnpike, had I remembered to bring kibbles for you and toys, and how far were we? When you took a turn, and there was no sign or sound of it. So when there, and the boys carried the litter, the food, the water bowl, while in the air above, twirling the feather on a string, tied to the stick like a parade up the sidewalk to the front porch, and they jumped up and down. When you lay still in the crate brought out from the back seat, when the boys sounded and moved like hunters of wild coon, and you'd in silence already taken your last breath, when all of these things had happened, and it was already done. It was then I wished the day could be over. You could be climbing the stairs, heading to bed with me, as so many thousands of times as when. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks for sharing a pet poem at the end, too. Our next reader is Candace Curran. Welcome, Candace.
Thank you. This book is amazing, and I'm so happy to be a part of it. My poem is called Mausoleum. All the things I didn't say came dredged from heavy stone, breathing with its own iron lung. I love you in, I love you out. He knows. The one-sided banter with the coffin keeps a vigil for a safe house, a place to rest remorse, a mausoleum for forgiveness born again every day. I pray like a mime, a white-faced fool. I'm listening for a pulse, a sign, music from a porcelain doll. Can you hear me? In. Do you? Out. You could make a different world from your dumb grave. And I have a haiku that was originally taken from a poem called In the Dark from the upcoming Slate Roof Press publication, The Sound of Her Good Name. And the haiku is titled In the Dark. After the funeral, in the night, the music box playing on its own. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.